Okay, so in this video, I'm going to discuss something that's been brewing in my brain for a while now. After I changed my diet, my thinking actually became a lot clearer, and I was able to read like I never have been before. So I've been taking advantage of that fact and doing a lot of research. Okay, so that's I apologize for not posting videos for long periods of time, and in my absence, I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to audiobooks. Now, there's one aspect of philosophy I'm studying. In particular, it's epistemology, or the theory of knowledge. Okay, and I'm noticing in a lot of these studies that I'm reading, and the whole business of relating to arrowheads and lithics and artifacts gets tied in with this theory of knowledge type of thing. So, what I'm going to discuss here is the way in which I see most of these studies are presented these days. And they're presented in a way that uses evidence in support of their hypothesis. Okay, and I do that too. I'm guilty of doing that too, and I've done that in the past. I want to try to switch that over to using evidence to critique a hypothesis. That's more of a scientific method, or it is the scientific method, is using evidence to critique or to test your hypothesis. All right? Now you can derive a hypothesis from evidence or from anecdotes, which is a small amount of evidence, or you can have mountains of evidence and developed hypotheses from a process called induction. Okay, and I've been studying logic too and trying to figure out how logic works and how it ties into these studies. Now, as far as evidence goes, I'm seeing a lot of supporting evidence, which is good, but it's also frustrating because they're leaving out half the equation, basically. All right, they're leaving out what's wrong with their hypothesis, and I could consider it my job to point that out, and maybe that's what they want. But there's a lot of, how should I say, discussions that are kind of fruitless, and a lot of evidence that is redundant and doesn't add much to the discussion. Okay. A good scientist knows that if you find one contradictory bit of evidence for his hypothesis, it's like a torpedo that hits a ship and sinks the ship. No matter how big it is, it only takes one torpedo to sink your ship, right? All it takes is one solid, good piece of evidence to sink a ship, like a torpedo, or to sink a hypothesis. Okay. Now a lot of researchers don't like that idea. In fact, they resist it and they hate it. If you bring it up, they think you are to be dismissed because of your pitiful small amount of evidence cannot sink this huge ship. Okay. But if you're honest, and if you have some integrity, you're the captain of that ship, and it goes down with a torpedo, you go down with your ship. In other words, you go down with your hypothesis, you retract it, you seek a better one. Okay. If you're a captain of a ship and you didn't go down with your ship, and you look around for another job, who's going to hire you if you were not married to that ship? You know what I mean? Same thing should apply to scientists, but these days it doesn't. I think these days what it is if you have lots of luggage and lots of support and lots of ability to generate support for your hypothesis, I want that guy. I want the guy that has a lot of baggage. It just doesn't make sense. Okay? You have to learn, and I've got to learn, that solid criticism, is the way forward to knowledge. Okay, and one example might be if you find a bone with an arrowhead or a projectile point stuck in the bone. That's a certain amount of evidence for the whatever animal that is and the projectile point being coexistent with each other, right? Now, it could have been an accident. The hunter could have hit a bone that was left there for hundreds of years, or maybe even a fossilized bone with an arrowhead stuck in it. So it really doesn't give you a good scientific basis to date the arrowhead from that bone. But if the bone has healed over the arrowhead, or the projectile point, or the stone tool, that shows that the bone and the stone tool coexisted because it healed over. That means the animal was still alive during the time where that lithic tool was being used. Now that, if you date the bone, since you can't date the stone, if you date the bone and you find out that it's older than all the other projectile points that you have found in the area, and you have developed a big hypothesis and lots of support for people in that area only existed during a certain time, and it's up here somewhere, and you find this bone and projectile point way underneath them by thousands of years, that bit of evidence is like a torpedo that would sink that ship of evidence for there being only people at this level of the strata that you're excavating. They actually existed down here. Okay? That's how science should progress. Now, it progresses that way, but very, very slowly. So, what I'm going to do in my studies, and I've had to rethink, and that's why it's taken me a long time also to do my series on the Atlatl, is to rethink how I'm going to be doing these studies, because it's more fun for me if it's more fruitful, because I could just be a spaz and then put all this stuff out like I did before and just generate tons of content without much continuity and with lots of loose ends, and I say I'm going to do something and I don't. That's going to stop. Okay, so I'm going to focus on philosophical aspects. I'm going to bring philosophy into this, and other concepts like logic and stuff, epistemology, and really get into it pretty deep. I do want to get into it more deeply, and I do want to eventually publish some things like a glossary of flint-knapping definitions and stuff like that, which I'm working on. So I guess that's it. Okay.